All right, hi everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Campus Conversations. And today I am with Professor Christopher Carroll, who is Assistant Director of Veterans Resources at Vanguard. And we're just going to be kind of talking about that and his overall teaching experience at Vanguard as well. So, my first question to you, Professor, is can you kind of just like give a quick overview of like your work at the Veterans Center and how students can get involved in that?
Okay, so I oversee all of our veteran programming. So I'm the guy that when students come in with veterans benefits, either veterans or we have a lot of dependents here that use benefits. There's a lot of dependents that are actually eligible for benefits. And I always suggest if there's anybody listening whose parents serve, ask me the question, see if they're eligible too, because I have since I've been here found people that are eligible for benefits that didn't even know. So for
Mm.
any of the listeners of the podcast, I encourage asking that. But that's like the mechanical side. I also oversee the Veterans Resource Center, which is the space we have on campus. We're actually in the Lane building. We're right on the corner there, right outside where the fountain is. And that's just a space that is basically a communal space for anybody that's connected with our community. So that's our veterans, that's dependents. We have an ally population that spends time in there. Those are people that have drawn connections with some of our veterans and dependents, and they utilize the space as well. Um, and the space itself, I keep it stocked with goodies. There's food, there's some drinks, there's all sorts of things. There's printing. And it's where anybody that has questions about veterans side can ask questions. I've got my own work study staff that works in there. So if those doors are open, there's somebody that's being paid to be in there, even
Uh-huh.
if I'm not in that center, that can answer some questions you may have about anything related to veteran services on campus. It's also the hub for our student veteran club. So we do have an on-campus student veteran club that does have an affiliation with the nationwide Student Veterans of America. Um, and that is open to any student at Vanguard, be it veteran, dependent, ally, however he wants to be. And
Hmm.
basically the biggest idea is finding ways to advance that community. My big goal with what I've done with veteran services is trying to connect students with veterans and veterans with students and kind of finding those common ground areas too. So I've been my new focus has been going beyond just the veteran and making sure I'm reaching out to dependents because there's you sit in your class, you may have dependents that are sitting there using VA benefits that you don't know, and they have a different life experience. So I've
Yeah.
been trying to connect those people as well, and if I can, hey, bring them into the fold.
Yeah. No, exactly.
So
What benefits do like people have for like joining the Veterans Club? Like, what is like the biggest thing you hear, like the biggest takeaway from students or like getting
so
involved?
since we are nationally organized, there's a lot of resources that are available through the national organization. So they do gear a lot towards student veterans, but they have grown into that idea of doing beyond just the veteran, looking at the dependents, looking at allies. So there are resources on there for internships that if you want to do things that are specific to kind of helping that veteran population. Um, One of the big things that Student Veterans of America does is they are big in veteran policy advocacy. So Student Veterans of America's national headquarters is on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. So they
Oh
actually
wow,
have a two-story building, catty corner off the mall. They can look at the White House from the roof of their building. So
that's
um,
crazy.
they do have a couple of events that they do host nationwide every year. Um, they have a leadership institute that if we have a member that has been applied for leadership institute, they can be funded to go to Washington, D.C. to the national headquarters. And they spend a couple days learning about leadership advocacy, how that looks to support veteran initiatives. And when it comes to dealing with Congress, they really do focus on the veteran sides of things. But they do take them around the halls of Washington, D.C. They do walk the halls of the Capitol building. They do set
That's so cool.
appointments with our legislators and have informational sessions with them during during Leadership Institute. They have a national convention once a year. That's in January. This year we took 9 students to Student Veterans of America, and that was in Colorado Springs this year. And it's a 3-day conference where they have breakout sessions of all sorts of different things. Um, how to support veterans, how to other resources that veterans and dependents can have. There are certain things. Honestly, one of the things I took out of that, one of the sessions I attended was from the Library of Congress on the Veterans History program. Um, and I've actually proposed a class in the history of political science department on oral history and being
Mm.
able to, the culminating project for that class being a recorded oral history that would be submitted to the Veterans History Project, which I think would be really cool. So,
Yeah, that would be.
um, we did, so that's the NatCon. And then they have another event that's Washington Week, which is when SVA gets their appointments specifically with members of Congress to talk about things. So one of our students this year, she's a graduate student this year. She just graduated with her bachelor's in psychology, but she actually is a VFW, so that's Veterans of Foreign Wars, SVA legislative fellow. She goes to all of these events. She'll be there for Washington Week, and they actually go talk to lawmakers about things that are impacting veterans. So what
Mm.
she is doing, her specific project for her fellowship, she is working on the passage of trying to get the passage of House Resolution 1965, and that is a proposal to raise the veterans book stipend from $1,000 annually to $1,400, and then create an increase for them to get more money tied to the consumer price index. So
Mm.
right now, veterans that use their benefits, they get a book stipend. It's $1,000. That the last time that number was changed was 2009. Um, and things have gotten dramatically expensive. So think about your textbooks. Can you get all your textbooks for $1,000 a year is
Yeah,
probably not.
yeah,
It's getting tough, and especially for students in some of the harder STEM categories.
right. Yeah,
That you think, I mean, you're blowing your money on one textbook and the lab counterpart stuff. So,
yeah,
and
exactly.
that's what she's doing. She's specifically working on that, and she's actually working with legislative leaders that does that. And she'll be out at Washington Week, and it gives her opportunity to sit in front of the leaders that do that. So.
It sounds like a great networking like opportunity.
Oh, it is amazing. Like when we go out to NatCon, there's about 2,000 participants at NatCon.
My
So,
gosh.
and like I said, it's a 3-day event. There's general hosted sessions. So this past year, we got to hear from different members. We got to hear from 2 senior enlisted service personnel. So, uh, Command Master Sergeant Bass from Joe Bass from the Air Force. She was the first female Command Master Sergeant of the Air Force. I can't remember the Army, but we had a Command Master Sergeant from the Army that was one of the speakers. Last
Hmm.
year, one of the speakers was Undersecretary of Defense, or I'm sorry,
Oh,
Undersecretary of, not Undersecretary, Secretary of Veterans Affairs was Dennis McDonough. And I actually got to meet him in person. He actually presented
wow.
me with the challenge coin, which was kind of cool. So
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
yeah, so there's networking, and you get to meet some pretty impressive people. Um, 3 Medal of Honor winners were at NatCon this year, so it's just some of the people you meet are just amazing. So
Yeah, no, that's crazy. I know that you have a military background. Can you kind of just like go over that and kind of how that you ended up in like teaching in like history and political science?
yeah, so um, graduating high school, I was going to go to college, get my history degree. I was going to go teach high school history. That was 18-year-old me. Um, that first year in college, I didn't fit right. It didn't click the same way high school was. and I figured I needed to change, so I joined the Marine Corps. And I enlisted in the reserve, and I ended up doing my training time, and I enlisted in the 90s when it was fairly quiet internationally. There's look nothing like the last 20 years of
Hmm.
American history, but so I never deployed any place. So I spent my time in the reserve, but it did give me opportunity to go back to school. Um, I had a couple different ideas that I was going to do to make it rich. And ultimately, I came back. I got fired from one job, and I realized, why don't I just go back and do what I said I was going to do when I was 18? I had a pretty good head on my shoulders when I was 18. So I went back and got my bachelor's degree in history. I was going to go get my teaching credential right after that. And one of my faculty members, I got my bachelor's degree from Cal State Dominguez Hills, that asked me why am I going to go into high school teaching? Because she said I write well. I'm very good analytically. I think I would think you could do well in a master's or PhD program. And then other things came down the pipe, and I kind of didn't feel right going into that high school teaching. So I did from there. I went and got my master's degree in history at Cal State Fullerton, and I got to cross paths with some amazing people. Um, one of the people who was my original thesis advisor is Dr. Gordon Bakken. So for those of you that are applied to Phi Alpha Theta, there are some scholarships you can win, and one is actually named after Gordon Bakken. Um, he was specialized in Western history and military history.
Oh, wow.
And in my past, a lot of people say, well, military history is a dying thing. You need a social, cultural, you need this and that. And it's like, Dr. Bakken was the one that said, do you like military history? You go, yeah. I said, well, study military history. So
Yeah.
I did a lot of military history there. And then you have other things in your life that kind of change your direction. So I joined another organization that has a strong foundation in California history. So I got very interested in California history. It kind of dovetailed real nicely when my son was born, because one thing I did do is I took my time on maternity leave after or paternity leave after my wife finished her maternity leave. So with my son, what we would do, so I had one of those nice little backpacks that you can carry your kid in, and
Hmm.
I would go hike in the hills of Palos Verdes. So in the South Bay, I live in the South Bay, and there are all sorts of the. I mentioned to you before our interview about the bunker next to the Korean Friendship Belt, but there's all sorts of bunkers that are built all along the hills of Palo Verde that were basically the Western Shore defense to protect originally the port of Los Angeles back in 1910, but ultimately to protect the West Coast from Japanese invasion. Um, so it gave me that opportunity to combine the ideas of military history and California
Yeah.
history. So it's truly fascinating to be able to let those things meet. So
Would you say that those two are like your specialty, California history and military history?
I would. I've taught other things, and I've dabbled in a lot of other things. Like I mentioned, oral history is something I did a lot of in grad school. But those two pieces, I especially modern military history, I one of the things I always say is history to me starts with the closed breech rifle. So while I'm fascinated by the politics side of like the U.S. colonial period, because I am really an Americanist, I'm really fascinated by the military history after when you start getting sadly more lethal weaponry and more efficient weaponry, and it created all those changes in tactics from the old
Yeah.
Napoleonic squares and volley lines to the guerrilla warfare we see in war today. So
Yeah,
it's
that makes sense.
fascinating to see that.
If you could teach a class right now, like a special topic, like what would it be? Obviously, you like military history and California history, but is there like another one that just like comes to mind?
Weird. I actually have been working on things trying to figure out, and I would love to teach the history of baseball.
Oh,
I
that
grew,
I would take that.
I grew up watching baseball. I love baseball. I grew up in one of I grew up in just me watching baseball late 70s through the 80s. Some of the great players in that period. I mean, Wade
Mhm.
Boggs, Tony Gwynn, Greg Maddux, all these great players of that era, the pre-steroid era. So it's kind of an interesting time to watch baseball, and I just love that. And I've kind of gone backwards. I've kind of pulled on one of my strings of history, found out about the Wilson company who originally made the first gloves and the evolution of how the first gloves and how the first baseballs were created.
That'd
So
be a fun class.
I think it would be a great class to teach. So
Yeah. And I know
Dr.
Vanguard.
Wilson, if you're watching, thinking about it.
Yeah. I know Vanguard doesn't have an ROTC program. So for, running the Veterans Affairs, do you guys kind of like partner with other schools with like ROTC programs, or is that not something you guys like totally emphasize? Like, what is your relationship with that?
So we actually do partner with a couple other schools. And we have a Army ROTC program that we partner with Cal State Fullerton. And that will lead you to a career as either an Army officer, or you can also be commissioned in the California National Guard through their ROTC program. And we also have two programs that we partner with for Air Force ROTC. We have one that is out of Loyola Marymount down by LAX.
Hmm.
Um, and we have another one that's at Cal State San Bernardino. So those two programs are designed to lead you towards commissioning in either the Air Force or the Space Force.
Yeah.
That they're tangential forces. So uh, and I know there's a lot of people that are in the LMU program, not necessarily Vanguard. I think I only have one person in that program right now. But there are a lot of people in that program that's where they're looking to is Space Force, because
Oh, wow.
the local base down there, the LA Air Force Base is 80% Space Force. And actually, if you drive
Gosh.
through the base housing is in Palo Verde. They use the old Fort MacArthur housing for officer housing there, and their housing actually is listed as Space Force. So
Oh, wow. I
it's
didn't know it was like that developed yet.
yeah, it's kind of impressive how big it's grown in its 5.5 years,
Yeah.
almost 5.5 years.
Yeah, that's
So,
true. All right. Well, thank you, Professor. I appreciate your time and just answering some questions about what you do here at Vanguard. I
yeah,
appreciate it.
not a problem. Thanks, Lane.
Of course.